Welcome back to Young, Dumb, and in Love, where we want to empower you to have a stronger and better marriage. We hope that you enjoy today's episode. All right, Brittany, are you ready?
I'm ready.
To talk my ear off? I'm just kidding. I'm going to
Yes.
talk your ear off. That's what's really going to happen
I'm ready.
here.
All right.
Do you ever feel like the coffee that we drink just isn't enough anymore?
I mean,
just feel like sometimes
like the ice ones you buy, like
the ice ones that
I
we
really
buy
like
from the
them,
store. We need something that's a little bit stronger. Yeah. So I think it's time to start moving on to maybe something we brew ourselves, and we get a little bit more adventurous about our coffee. Because I don't feel any caffeine running through my veins anymore.
Me either.
And or maybe that's just a sign that I drink too much coffee. I'm not sure. Whatever it is.
Maybe.
Well, today we're going to be talking about rules of engagement. Okay, we've been talking about communication the past couple weeks. Really been breaking down a lot of things when it comes to communication in your marriage, and we truly believe and really, really want you to capture that communication is key to have a successful marriage. And when you can master the art, and trust me, it's an art. You got to learn how to be an artist with your communication with your spouse. When you learn how to master the art of communication, you're going to learn how to have a successful and thriving marriage with your spouse. And that's what our goal. Our goal is to find that, help you find that for you and your spouse today.
So today we're talking specifically about when you're engaging in tough conversations, specifically like arguments. Ooh. So more like heated conversations. And
we know those happen almost all the time.
Yeah. And so just having that's why it's called rules of engagement. And I think, well, one, we do know they happen all the time, right?
Yeah.
And two, that if you don't really set those boundaries,
when you don't really set those boundaries.
Some work text coming through. He's going to focus. Do not disturb for 1 hour.
There you go.
So now I'm in timeout.
Now you're in timeout.
I'm in timeout. If you don't set those boundaries, those rules, those guardrails before those conversations, then they can just get like too heated too quickly.
Gosh.
Right?
So easily, especially when you're frustrated, you know?
Absolutely. And we definitely did not do this when we first got married. And no one really told us to hey, you're going to want to set fighting rules, right? There's going to be times that it's like Fight Club and you're going to wish that you had set rules. No, they were like, it's going to be so great. And you get to have sex for fun and free. And, you don't have to worry. And it's all these things, but not hey, when you fight and it gets down and dirty and you're going to want some rules.
Yeah, you're going to want some rules.
And so a lot of you that are listening are well, we've been married a long time and we don't have rules. Well, we didn't set rules. I would say it was a long time where we would just fight. The gloves would not physically,
gloves come off,
but more not physically, but where we would say things, do things there were no rules.
Yeah.
Say the things you want to say, do, and a lot of those things you can't take back, you know?
It's so true.
So that's kind of brings us to the first thing is set boundaries and the rules before you fight. Yeah. Okay.
And don't try to set boundaries while you're fighting. No, that's not going to really help.
No. Do you ever, so when you're playing a game with your kids, especially our youngest, because she's still little, she's only 4, and we're playing the game. She's like, no, that's not the rules. Do this or
she's
do
making
that.
It up
and she's
as
making
we go.
it up as she goes, right? No, move that person over there. Or no, when I draw this card, I get to move 3 times, not just 1 time. And you're like, whoa. The rules are you only get to go 1 time. And that's what's important when you're, making these, when you're fighting, you're not going to, most likely you don't have the self-control when you're upset to go, no, we can't say that. That's not nice. No, you're just going to say things and you're going to do things and you're going to, walk out and slam a door or someone may punch a hole in the wall. I don't know. I'm not saying these things have happened with us,
Nope.
But so set those boundaries.
Yeah. Well, you have to think about your marriage almost like a sport, right? Everything that you do, there's got to be some type of boundary. There's got to be some type of rule that you guys set together. And right now, our youngest is actually in soccer for the first time.
Oh, my gosh.
She is 4 years old playing soccer, and it's hilarious, right?
It's hilarious.
Now,
she quit 20 times the first practice, 10 times the second practice, and no times the third one. And she
Yeah.
literally came over and said to me,
I quit.
well, she did. She quit the first. She goes, I hate this. I quit. I don't even know where she heard the word hate. She's like, I hate this. I quit. But the third practice, guess what? She came over and at the end of practice,
Yeah.
she told me, I didn't quit one time today.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
It's so real.
I don't know why I told that story, but it was so cute.
Because I brought it up.
I know, but I told the story because it's so cute. But
Well, I was telling the story because I wanted to talk about how in her soccer right now, it's almost like there's no rules, right? The rules are
yeah.
we switch out every 4 minutes. The kids
Yep.
switch out. We have 16 minutes of gameplay total. And that's about it, you know.
16 half, like 16-minute half and a 16-minute half.
And the one rule that they have to follow is 2 rules. They have 2 rules. There's 2 teams, okay? That's one rule. You're on your own team with your kids, right? And then the second rule is don't touch the ball with your hands, okay? Now, the point of soccer, especially for these little ones, is to get the ball into the goal.
Yeah.
Now, when you're that age and when you're just learning how to do it, it's chaos. I mean, the kids are just going everywhere.
They're like outside of the cones.
They're kicking the ball the wrong way.
Yeah.
They're all scoring for the other team because they don't know what goal to go for. You know, like it's just absolute chaos. When you get to high school and you go to a soccer game, it's going to be very, very rule based. You're going to have to. There's red cards and yellow cards and there's all kinds of stuff that they're going to do. But at this age, it's just like we don't know what the heck we're doing. We're just running all over the place, kicking the ball, and sometimes in marriage, that's what it can feel like.
And
we're
it's
just
not as
running
cute.
out. Yeah, it's definitely not as cute.
It's cute when you're 4 years old and you're running around, but when you're 35 and you're running around with no rules, not cute.
But the rules are there for a purpose to help you compete in the game that you are in, right? And same thing goes for your marriage. You have to look at your marriage and put place in some rules of communication, rules of engagement, so that when you do argue or you are in a bad place with each other, you're able to go, okay, hold on. We've agreed that we're going to talk. We're going to have these conversations. And if it is an argument, we don't see eye to eye. We've placed rules to help us come to a place where we can have agreement with each other. And when you do that, you're going to have more successful arguments with each other.
Yep. So having those rules, and then kind of like as you're setting those boundaries, you know, and it may be like, hey, if we start raising our voices, we're done, you know, fighting. If one of our rules is neither one of us can leave the house. So like,
why did that rule come into play?
Because when we were dating, we got in an argument, and I was living at my parents' house. So we were at my parents' house. We got in an argument, and Julian got in his car and left.
Yeah, I was like,
and
no, I'm not going to do this.
Said? Don't come back. Ever.
Yeah.
He laughs.
I was like, okay, but it was a real thing because I didn't know how to have that kind of engagement, right? Because for me, I shut down if there's intense arguing going on, right? And when we started arguing, I was just like, I don't want to engage with this. I'm just going to leave. And so I just left. And I learned the hard way.
Just don't come back. I think I like locked the door.
No, for sure you did.
Because I was like,
for sure you
did.
did.
Don't leave. Don't ever come back.
Yeah, don't come back, boy.
But so that's one of our rules. You don't leave. That doesn't mean that you can't be like, you know, might leave the room or like give yourself a little time out, but you don't leave the house. And again, I think, and this is where now we're talking in marriage, but if your kids are around, that is also not an appropriate time to have a fight. So having those boundaries of, okay, he doesn't leave the house. 2, we do not have arguments in front of our children.
Yeah.
And if we feel like it's starting to go there, then we table it. And even if we're both like mad at each other, it's like, we're not doing this in front of them because it's not fair to them.
Well, and kids are sponges. They see everything we do.
Absolutely.
They don't listen to much of what we say, but but they listen and they see everything we do. And even if we're like having like not even arguing, but we're kind of just being serious and we're having a conversation.
Like, stop fighting!
Stop fighting, you guys!
The older one knows
literally just talking.
Yeah.
But we try to do that to protect them from what the actual situation is, because I'm telling you, kids are sponges and they catch everything.
Yep. So set those rules, you know, and then, I mean, obviously a huge one is we aren't going to get physical and in a way that is painful to the other one. We're not going to physically hurt each other. Yeah. And so, you know, having these boundaries set, and I feel like that should go without saying, but
yeah, for sure.
It needs to be said. Like there are going to be boundaries, you know? And so having those boundaries, and then be aware of what's going on in your spouse's world. And that's going to help you in these rules of engagement.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's just think like outside stressors. So work, kids,
If you're in school,
if you're hungry or hangry or tired, you know, and like, these are things that I know you laugh in the moment because you're like hungry. Okay. If you're hangry and you're trying to have an argument, like
it's just going to make it worse.
Just don't do it.
Yeah.
And
and that's the communication side. You have to express what's going on.
Absolutely.
So she wouldn't have known. But even just like yesterday, I was
just
super
see it on him. He was just
hangry.
Yeah.
But it was hangry. I just needed to eat something, and it was really affecting me. Like something was off, right? Yeah. And I just told her, I was like, I just think I'm hangry. I just told her, and it was like, okay, great.
Well, because
now I know that like he's not just being a jerk to me.
Last week it was, you know, like the week before the, you know, ladies, and I was exhausted. I could not do anything else. I was like, I am just so tired. And so I just like laid down and fell asleep on the couch for like 45 minutes. And sometimes it's just like, you need to know what's going on in your spouse's life.
Imagine being a girl dad. Only girls in this house.
So, so, you know, be aware of what's going on in their world. That'll help with, you know, these arguments or whatever. And then, knowing their history.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why we talk about all the time, like why communication is so important. When you know your spouse's history and the stuff that they've gone through, one, you never attack them for those things, but that will also help you to identify why they may be reacting a certain way. Because you're like, okay, this is really weird. Like this feels like it's out of left field. And if you know your spouse has a history with whatever it is, like for me, for example, like with anxiety, then Julian might be able to be like, ooh, you know what? I feel like maybe she's reacting out of that. Maybe I should try to approach this differently, you know, and also it could really lead you to have compassion and then squash the argument to begin with.
So true.
And then like we've been talking about like styles. It's another reason why it's important to know your spouse's style because it's going to help you identify different rules. Like if I know Julian's a certain type of communicator, it's going to help us when we're setting those guardrails.
Yep. So true. So true.
Yeah.
Style's huge. Another one that we should go over is never bring up old wounds from your marriage in the heat of the moment. I think there's a lot of
that is a hard
couples that will do this.
Oh yeah.
And maybe not even on purpose, but it just happens because what's happening in that moment might remind you of something that happened in the past, and you're just like, well, you're just this because you're in that, blah, 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 and it just turns into this thing that it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Instead of with your arguing, we really should be future focused, right? We shouldn't be focusing so much on the past and what happened back then, especially in the heat of the moment.
Especially that is never good.
The point of having conversations and maybe when you don't agree is to have an outcome, right? To be future focused with each other. And when you can really focus on, okay, how are we going to come to a place where we can agree on what we're arguing about right now?
Yeah.
That we got to meet middle ground somewhere because that's what a marriage is, right? We're going to give and take both ways. But when we have a middle ground that we're trying to aim for, that's future focused. When you start focusing on the things of the past, all you're going to do is just dig a big hole and bury yourself inside of it.
That's never, then the argument becomes never ending.
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
Because we can go on forever about all the things that we have in our past. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing. If you start to then trudge back to stuff that's already been discussed and already been forgiven, then you're really not going to solve the issue at hand. You're just, then your spouse is just defeated. Like, well, if you're still mad at me from 10 years ago, then how in the world are we going to fix what happened 10 minutes ago?
Exactly.
That doesn't mean that these things don't need to be addressed. If it really is bothering you so much that every time you have an argument, you feel like the need to bring it up, then when that argument is done, then you sit down and say, hey, this is still bothering me, I think. When the other day when we were talking, I wanted to bring it up. I didn't, but it's still bothering me.
Well, I felt like my wound was getting opened up, you know?
Yeah. But don't bring it up in the heat of the moment. It is not. Focus on the future and at the thing in the moment. You know, that doesn't mean, and maybe that thing then becomes like, you're like, okay, actually I'm mad about that. Then table it for then.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Table it. That's good. Yeah.
Never bring up your spouse's trauma, abuse, or brokenness from any time, and specifically from their childhood.
Yeah, in the heat
of the moment.
Yeah.
Now these are all like in the heat of the moment. So obviously these are things that you need to discuss with your spouse. but not in the, like, I'm not going to bring up something from Julian's childhood in a way to hurt him or
to win the argument. Yeah.
Or, well, you're communicating like that because fill in the blank, or you did that because fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Just off limits, you know? And I think that's the
Yeah.
other thing. And that would be a great thing to kind of even put back into that first point, is set the boundary of like, certain things are not, like, they're off limits to bring up in heat of the moment.
For sure.
Times,
Yep.
you know, and a lot of that would be, you know, like, say Julian decided to bring up something, about, you know, like my, like, childhood in the middle of a conversation, then that is in and of itself a form of abuse, because you're really in a way trying to put back on your spouse that victim mentality. Because when you can get someone in that place where they start to feel like, oh my gosh, that victim feeling again, then they're just gonna, sometimes they're just gonna give up in the fight, because they're just like, I can't win. I quit. I'm done.
No matter what I do or say, you're always going to bring that up.
It's a way of playing dirty.
It is dirty.
It's playing dirty, you know, and, my parents taught me cheaters never prosper. And I just think it's a way of, it's like playing a cheat card a little bit. You're like, well,
is 100%.
So yeah, and that doesn't mean that if you have those things and you haven't discussed them with your spouse, absolutely, they need to be brought up in the appropriate time. And we've talked about this over and over. But in the heat of the moment is not where you bring it up.
So true. So true. And that's one of those things you have to have a very safe place, whether that's with a counselor, a pastor, or whatever, like where you can have a third party, someone who can walk you through those wounds,
100%.
those things from your childhood, the brokenness. Like, those are so deep and embedded into our souls that we have to focus on fixing and mending those issues with the correct help.
Right.
You know, and so you should never bring those up, period, unless it's in a safe environment where you can truly work on those things and work through them.
Always for your spouse's healing and their redemption, and not for harming or
not
hurting,
for harming,
or
hurting,
or shaming
100%.
them, because they already have felt those things
Or
do feel those things, you know. And so that's just that's a no.
Yeah.
Resist hateful speech, name calling, anything. Words last forever.
Yeah, you ever hear that saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me"? No, that's because they destroy you. They don't hurt you. They destroy you.
Right?
That's the truth. Words are powerful. And whatever you're saying to your spouse, you're speaking over them, right?
Absolutely.
And so if I were to say negative, hateful, mean things to her, she's really not going to hear any of the maybe positive things that I might have thrown in there. She's only going to hear the negative, hurtful, powerful things that I'm speaking over her. And so your words that you speak over each other are so, so important. Probably more important than most of it that we talk about. Your words matter. Now, actions are huge too, but man, speak life over your spouse.
Well, and the thing is too, it's like you could, like, their words are unforgettable, unfortunately. And once you've put it out there, you can't take it back. I don't want to even say it's hard to take it back. No, you literally can't take it back. You can apologize. You can ask for forgiveness, but you cannot take them back. Yeah. They are out there. And so it's like why it's so important to be so careful about what you say. And I love that the Bible says this, like, watch your tongue, keep your mouth shut, and you will stay out of trouble. I was like, see, Proverbs 21:23.
Words of the wise.
And those who control their tongue will have a long life. Yep. Opening your mouth can ruin everything. And I was like, do I even have to say anything else? But I mean, there's so much, and we're going to unpack like a lot of just like what scripture says and just godly communication and communicating well. These were really just like, hey, these are rules of engagement for those heated moments. But words are the most powerful thing that we have. They're such a blessing and can be such a curse at the same time. Yeah. And I think too, what we forget, and we'll talk about this. So obviously resisting that hateful speech in this time, but what you can unlock in such a positive way in your speech too, and we'll unpack that in another episode, because this one's really more about engaging in those more heated moments. But you have so much power with the words that you say, and some of you and some, even obviously we have to ask for forgiveness from each other all the time, but some of you might be like right now, like, I need to go to my spouse and I need to ask them for forgiveness, or I need to, say like, I'm sorry for that thing that I called you or that I said, or, whatever that is. Because it's stuck with them.
Yeah.
And you could be married 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and something your spouse said to you
20 years ago
can stick with you,
So
anyway,
real. Yeah. That's why I try to make sure I tell her she's so beautiful and I love her so much every single day.
Julian
Speak
has
life.
never called me a mean name.
I
my
mean,
Have you?
Not to your face. Haven't we all maybe said something under our breath like, ugh, maybe I shouldn't say that out loud. Come on. Don't even act like you're not guilty of that.
Oh, but see, I would admit it and just be like, yes, I absolutely did.
Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, yeah.
So he needs to ask me for forgiveness later. Anyway, all jokes aside, avoid or resist hateful speech.
That's right.
Words last forever.
That's right.
Stick to it or walk away. So when I say walk away, I don't mean leave the house in your car, because
I'm like,
if the door's locked when you come home. No, like stick to these guardrails that you've set. And if you really start to feel like I cannot for the life of me stick to this right now, you might need to walk away. Mm-hmm. You might need to say, I just need a moment. And here's the thing. The other day, I was having a rough day.
Yes.
Admittedly, having a rough day, didn't want to talk, be touched, looked at. I kind of wanted everyone just to like, if he wanted to leave the house, then I'd have been like, sure, you should totally go.
Get out of here.
Just
but
me
I could
and
read
him
it
at
though.
home, and I came downstairs and I kind of was just like doing my thing. And he was like, are you okay? And I was like, not really. And he's like, what's up? And I was like, I don't want to talk about it right now. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I'm sure. And here's the thing.
Okay.
I knew that in that moment, I couldn't stick to the rules of engagement. And it wasn't anything like specific that I was like super mad about. I just like had a couple things that I needed to bring up or wanted to bring up. But I knew that in the moment, I wouldn't be able to stick to these things. I would have brought up past things and I would have just probably not been very nice. So I just didn't talk about it right then.
Yeah.
And then we talked about it later, right?
Yep.
I mean, here's the thing. Like sometimes you just have to be like, I love you.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And I'm not
but I'm not going to do this right now.
Yeah. And I'm not one to pry. If she says, I don't want to talk about it, I'm like, great. That's on you, girl.
Yeah.
I just go, that's on you. If you don't want to talk about it, and then.
Well, this is why it's important to know your spouse's style, though, because some spouses you need to maybe pry. Like, no, you need to tell me what's going on. Are you okay? And others, it's
Well,
like,
I know for usually I don't have to pry stuff out of you.
because I'll just tell you.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, though, is that's why it's important to know, because I need to pry things out of you a little bit. You might be like, oh, I'm okay. But I'm like, no, you're not. You need to tell me right now.
But deep down, I'm dying inside.
Yeah. So there's like, that's the thing, is knowing your spouse, their style, the way that they communicate,
The way they need to be
being a student
communicated
of
to.
your spouse, so that when I say I don't want to talk about it, it means I'm not talking about it. When he says I'm not going to talk about it, I'm like, ooh, I might have to push that a little bit.
So true.
And then knowing what's going on in their world. Like he knows what's going on, like with my work or with, how I may be feeling like, oh, as a mom right now, this is how I'm feeling, or, this is whatever it is. Because when I say I don't want to talk about it, then he's like, oh, I know, she's just busy. She's got a lot going on. And when you know those things, then you're like, oh, it's okay. She's fine. She just needs space.
Yep. So true.
Do you have anything to say about that?
Nope. Know your spouse's style. That's so important.
Yep.
And right in that moment, I definitely knew. And I was like, I'm not going to say anything to you then, because you're not telling me anything.
Yeah. Yep.
She's working it out in her head.
She's working it out. But then just be determined to win together. I think we always want to win our own side.
Yep.
But like we always talk about, if one of you loses and the other wins, you both lose.
Yeah.
The goal in marriage is to be a team. You are one. So if I lose, you lose. And if you win, I win. So it's like coming from it from that angle rather than like, I'm going to win this argument.
Yes.
And it's why it's so important to know your spouse. It's so important to want them to win too. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of saying it. I mean, because at the end of the day, if we're arguing and I feel like I got my point across and I said exactly what I needed to say and I'm right and she's wrong and she goes to the room and she's defeated and she's broken and she's, going through all of this stuff, how I feel in that moment about being right isn't going to do anybody any good, especially me. It's only going to make it worse for myself. It's going to make it worse for her. And so when you're in these moments, that's why it's so important to go, okay, we have to find a common ground, a place that we can see the future together, right? And when you do that, you're both going to win.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you're both going to lose. And I'd rather win because we're supposed to be on the same team. If you're on a team, if one person wins on that team, everyone wins. Yeah. If one person loses, everyone loses. That's just the way it works. And that's the way your marriage should work.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like when you really think about it, if you win and your spouse loses and say you walk, do you actually feel better?
No, not at all.
Like, do
not
you
that I've
really
ever,
feel
ever
better?
won an argument, but but no, I do not feel better.
And maybe in the moment you're like, oh yeah, like, oh, I got my point across. But like, do you actually feel better? Do you feel like your marriage is winning? Do you feel like you're growing? Do you feel like good about that? You know what I mean? I think that's the other thing is like when you really think about, man, like I just totally squashed their dreams, their feelings, their heart. Like, did that really feel good?
Yeah, no.
Do I feel like a better husband? Am I leading well? Am I leading the way Jesus would want me to? Do I feel like a good wife? Do I feel like someone who's a safe space for my spouse? Like, ouch. Like, no.
Not at all.
And if you're not a safe space, guess what? They might find one. And you want to be that for them. And so, setting those boundaries is so important.
Yeah.
That's
so true. And these boundaries, setting up these boundaries for you are going to keep you out of the hamster wheel. Like, at the end of the day, if you don't have boundaries when it comes to your communication, you're going to be just on a hamster wheel. You're not going anywhere. You're running and 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 running, and nothing's ever going to happen. You're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over with the same exact outcome, and that's failure.
Well, and we had talked about and it's such a great example and probably one that we use all the time because it's stuck with us, but like the fear dance, if you really can put anything in there because it's just about cycling and being on a hamster wheel. And I thought about, and this was just different notes I actually have literally written in pen just right here. But like when you're on the hamster wheel of communication and arguing or whatever it is, like what is it? You are defensive, cruel, shut down, like what are overspeak, attack, and get like whichever spouse, like, and I'll just for an example, I'm not like, I don't know. Cause like say it's one of you's defensive and one of you is cruel and, and then there's a shutdown. So it's like defensive, shut down, cruel, defensive, shut down, and then you're just like this constant. Over and over and over and over. And this just becomes exhausting and painful and frustrating and defeating. And that's not how marriage communication is supposed to go. Yeah. Not that it doesn't sometimes, and then you have to like halt that and be like, no, we're getting off of this and we're going to communicate better. And that's why, because we always have, I feel like every episode we say the word communication, like we should have a communication count. And that's why we went back and we're doing another communication series. And, next week and probably the week after, we're going to really focus on like how then, okay, I set boundaries and in the heat of the moment, this is how I'm going to try to communicate. But then how on a day-to-day basis do I just communicate well and in a healthy way, in a way that, my marriage is not shaken by outside things because we know how to communicate. Yeah. And I jotted down like healthy communication will lead to healthy marriages that thrive regardless of outside factors and have win-win outcomes. And I think that is really how you want to be able to communicate, right? Yeah. Where it's like, this could be going on. The kids are crazy. This needs to be done. We need to eat dinner. We need to do that. We need to do this. But if you have good communication, those things they keep going. You're on the hamster wheel of life, it feels like sometimes of, okay, we got to get this done. But when husband and wife are communicating well, then there's like that team, everything just goes easier.
It's so true.
I'm not frustrated because you didn't think about, how you could help or whatever it is. It's like just communicating it. This is what I need. This is what I need. So we'll be talking, what?
I just was thinking about this last week. It's all just real life examples, things that were happening, going on in our life, and just like communication, how much it helps to just say what we need, you know,
Say what you
because we
need
take
to
it.
say.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. So
Sensitive.
anyway, so coming up, me, I'm not sensitive.
I know.
You
I
can
know, I'm
say
saying.
you can say what you want, but trust me, I'm not going to be the sensitive one in this conversation.
I'm not talking about being sensitive, you being sensitive. I'm saying it's very now.
It's a sensitive subject. Anyway, so we'll be talking about like healthy communication. What does that look like? What does the Bible say about communication? And really talking more about just about our words, and then talking about body language, which, okay, body language. If you know what Disney character I'm referring to, please put it in the comments.
Yep. Body language.
Body language.
Okay. 60% of what we say isn't with words. So we'll be talking about that, what your body language says.
I'm always trying to give off some body language.
And then we're going to talk about improving romantic communication, which will be Julian's favorite episode. Oh my gosh. Okay, wrap it up before he gets too crazy. And he starts singing some like R&B from early 2000s.
Those are the jams.
Which would be his romantic communication.
I still listen to them. I'm not going to even lie.
But anyway, so again, just, rules of engagement, really think about like, how can we implement this in our marriage? And how can we, because honestly, becoming a good, I don't want to say arguer, but when you can really hone in on this and
totally,
they just go a lot faster. Like I would say, do we argue? Yeah, but they're like wrapped up really quick because we have almost become professional arguers.
Yeah.
I know it sounds weird.
Well, it's true though, because we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things.
On a lot of things, actually, we are
we're so different, and we like, what's a big deal to her? I'm like, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, and yep. And is anything a big deal to you? Because I'm like, I was going to say what's a big deal to him is not to me, but I was like, what's a big deal to Julian?
I mean, I can think of a few things, but we'll talk about that in another episode too.
One thing. You can think of one thing that's a big deal to you.
Guilty as charged.
But anyway, when you can become good at arguing, I know it sounds so weird because it's like counterintuitive. Good at arguing. They go by faster. They're less, actually they become more just like constructive.
Yep.
Than they do like hurtful. It's like, okay, this is the issue. How are we going to solve it? How do we get past it? And then you move on.
Yeah. It's like learning it's like being in a debate club, right? You got to just learn how to debate your side. And
honestly, one of you is probably better at arguing and could squash your spouse every time.
Sure there is.
I
am the not better arguer.
And these are things we wouldn't have pointed out about each other when we were first married. So if you're first married and you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that they would even say that. This is 18 years in the making of being together. You have to know
do
too,
a dance
like
on my chest.
one of you is probably more skilled with your words. One of you probably keeps.
This guy right here.
Guys, come on. They've been around long enough to know that it's probably not.
This guy.
It's totally you.
This guy right here.
One of you probably just
is smarter than the other. This guy.
No.
This guy.
Well, yeah. One of you just, if you wanted to try to win every argument, you could, but you wouldn't feel good about it.
Yeah. You would feel terrible about
yourself. I would feel terrible. One of you is probably, this is funny. We're just going to do this a little bit.
Okay.
One of you probably doesn't really mind to admit when you're wrong. And the other one probably absolutely, it's almost physically painful to admit when you're wrong.
I honestly don't know why it's so hard for her.
You can't even say it with a straight face. I can't even
say it with a straight face. Oh.
Would you say it's hard for you to admit when you're wrong?
Oh, gosh. No, it's so easy.
You're like literally
doing
crying.
it right now.
You're literally crying.
I'm literally doing it right now.
Do you think I admit when I'm wrong pretty easily?
But you're never wrong. So how could you admit that you're ever wrong?
That's not true.
See what I did there?
That's actually not true.
It's actually very true.
Okay.
99% of the time, you are not wrong. And I should listen to you, but I choose not to, and then I regret it later.
Really fast to be like,
you have great discernment. Let's just say that. She has great discernment, and I should listen to her more often.
But then my problem is I have a sharp tongue.
Oh, it's like a dagger to the heart, man. Skika! And I'm like,
I've had to. I've had to train that bad boy for a long time.
Why are you talking to me like that?
Okay, but do I do that as much anymore?
No,
I've
no,
come
no,
a
no.
long way.
It was a long sword. She's almost all the way down to a dagger. It's fun.
Rules of engagement. Set boundaries. Never bring up old wounds.
You just
your marriage.
did.
Anyway,
Okay.
but in all seriousness, these are serious.
Seriously. That's good. Okay. That's good. Could we do a little recap real quick just for them from the very top and just say what they are real quick?
You want me to say all of them?
So, yeah, just a little recap of rules of engagement of what we've discovered works for us really well.
All right. So set boundaries or rules before the argument.
Yep. Never bring up old wounds from your marriage in the heat of the moment.
Never bring up your spouse's trauma, abuse, or brokenness from childhood in the middle of an argument.
Yep. And resist hateful speech. Words last forever.
Stick to it or walk away and be determined to win together.
Yeah. And when you can win together, you're going to win. It's a win-win all the way around.
Win no matter what. Why do we always sing? It's so annoying.
I know, seriously. What is wrong with us? It's because we love music and that's what we do. You should hear us in the car when it's just us. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yesterday was living on a prayer.
Take my hand.
It was so great.
Make it, I swear.
It was so great. Well, we really hope that this episode helped you with your rules of engagement in your communication with your spouse. And just like we say every single time, make sure you hit that bell, you subscribe. We want to make sure you don't miss any of our episodes. Share this with your friends. If you have a friend who has a spouse that maybe they need to work things out, they need some help, send them the link. Let's share this around, because we know that what we have to say may not be perfect and may not be one size fits all. But what we do know that there are things about everything we say that are so important for every marriage. So we would love for you to share and be a part of this community. Hey, until next time, we'll see ya.